What's going on, everyone? In today's video, I wanted to go over a topic that's been requested a fair bit from some of my viewers, and that's going over some Alliance War tips and tricks, particularly at the viewpoint of an Alliance leader like myself, or anyone who has captain responsibility and is active in their Alliance War setup and direction, and things like that. So we're going to start off by looking at my Alliance War defense, show you my current layout and why it's like that, some tips that I recommend about layouts in general, and some things that you should be looking out for when arranging your Alliance in the various rooms. After that, I'll give some additional tips for war offense, including what rooms to focus on and why, and then finally go over some recommended teams for war, which of course is going to be dependent on how far in the game you are and what characters you have available to you. And of course, this isn't an exhaustive list by any means, so feel free to agree or disagree with anything I say here in this video. And if I miss anything, or if I miss something that you're curious about, feel free to leave that in the comments section below or ping me on Discord and I'll get back to you directly. So without further ado, let's get into it. And so there's one window I really want to just show off really quick in case people aren't aware about this. So this is the Alliance window now. If you click on the Alliance section, it'll bring this up with all of your Alliance mates. And if you click on the edit button, it'll actually show your Alliance. Now, under Alliance Management rank, this is important for Alliance War anyway, so depending on what this is set at, this will actually determine whether or not you can actually move helicarrier rooms and move people around on war defense. So, yeah, so currently mine is set to Captain, so anyone, myself who is a leader, and anyone with the Captain rank can do this. But just keep this in mind if you are someone in your Alliance that does deal with this kind of stuff. Make sure that the Alliance Management rank is set properly. So just wanted to show that really quick before we jump into the Alliance War screen. And so here we are in the Alliance War overview menu. So this is what you get when you click on Alliance War. And I just want to make people aware also of the war time. So when you click on the war time, this is the one that mine's currently set at. So this is noon Pacific time, Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday. And if you click on it, it'll actually tell you the zone that you're in. So we're in zone 4. So if anyone's watching this in zone 4 and you're in goal 3, you might have a chance in running into us. But these are set for different times. So if you are in the management side of things, then you guys can decide, you know, which is more appropriate for you guys. And I think that you can only change this once a month or once every so often. You can't do this all the time, but if you are needing to change your times because it doesn't work for you guys or whatever, then you know, just keep that in mind as well. So yeah, there is most of them are Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, although it seems to be about 6 hours apart. So this particular one that I'm in actually runs at the same time as usual patch times when patches go live, which is why we normally get compensation for that. But I guess others might actually have it worse, where they're actually being run through their actual wartime versus the start time, because ours is normally the start time for that. Okay, so what I wanted to show you guys is on the defense screen. I think I'm not covering anything important here. There's the war prep side. That's not really important there. So if you go into set defense here, should bring up your war defense part of the carrier. So this is what mine currently looks like here. So flight deck 1, obviously you can't do anything about this. Flight deck 1, 2, and 3. But then we have the engineering. This is the way that I have it currently set up. So engineering, a reactor, cargo bay across, and then bridge, security, armory, and barracks, med bay, and hangar. So these are the 9 other rooms here. I do want to make people aware that there is a move room function button here if you are of the management rank that can do this. So if I wanted to move things around, engineering reactor, for example, then it'll just swap them around like that. Oops, I should probably move it back. So if you want to move any of the rooms, which includes the people in the rooms, it's going to move them alongside that. Now, if you did want to move people individually as well, then you can click the Manage button here. I think these only appear if you have the particular rank to do so. You can move people, let's say move K2SO to the reactor, and then you can move that player, and this is a good quality of life. I don't believe they had this right in the get-go, but now they have it, and it will move everyone, including the teams that they have, into that room. So that's a good way of swapping people around. If instead you know, it's a lot easier that way. Before this, they had to like leave the room, and then you had to like swap with other people. It was a massive pain. So now you don't have to do that. So I'll move them back so they don't wonder what's going on. So. This is the layout that I have here for my Alliance here. The reason why I will say at the get-go, I would recommend that people change their layout probably every 6 weeks, maybe every month to 2 months. And the reason why you should do that is that sometimes you'll get into the same matches with other people. You'll get into a match with the same Alliance down the line. So at least for me anyways, maybe it's because of the zone that I'm in, but I've actually run into the same Alliance, you know, once every I would say about 8 weeks. But so if you have the same layout all the time, then there is a chance that they could take a screen cap of your helicarrier and then use that if they run into you later down the line. So for that reason, I would recommend changing your layout at least once every 2 months, just in case that something like that happens, and then they'll know where your good rooms are, and then they can get to it a lot easier because they already know where it is. So the reason why I have things set up the way I do is because that everyone has a different reasoning, but this is my reasoning. So I think that the most heavily protected rooms should be in this particular order: Armory, Barracks, Medbay, Reactor, and Bridge. Or sorry, Bridge and then Reactor. So 1 Armory, 2 Barracks, 3 Medbay, Bridge 4th, and Reactor 5th. In some order like that. I think the reason why the Armory should be protected the most is because of this global buff here. So you get, everyone on your team will get 20% max stats basically when attacking, and then the extra 10% bonus to military allies. I don't really talk about the military stuff because it's bogus and there's only like 4 or 5 characters with the military tag, Captain Marvel being one of the main ones. So when you are putting your war defense, when you're aligning your war defense, try to make your Armory probably the most protected room, because in my opinion that is one of the best. So for that reason, that's why I have security in the center here, facing Armory, Medbay, Reactor, and Bridge. This is very common, especially having security and Reactor next to each other, because that's really crippling. Reactor in general is a very crippling room because you get Disrupt. Now this messes up a whole lot of different teams on the offense that rely on buffs. There's a lot of teams out there that rely on buffs. Just on the top of my head, you know, Brotherhood 2.0, they are a team that relies on the starting buffs at the beginning. Fantastic Four sometimes as well. Trying to think of some other ones, not all of them, but you know, there are a good amount that do rely on starting buffs. And for that reason, so even though Barracks for me is a second priority, I think I recently shifted these around. I had Barracks actually where Armory was, but I moved them recently. I did some adjustments to my room recently, to the rooms, and that's why it's set that way. But normally I would have Barracks also with the security debuff. Now engineering I don't find as much of a priority buff. It doesn't make a huge difference. It helps a little bit, but I don't think it's as good as security in terms of adjacency buffs. So you do get the defense up for all defending allies when you have engineering next to any of the rooms. Now I guess some of the issues with this is that because it's adjacent to Flight Deck 1, Flight Deck 1 is also getting the engineering buffs, so they can see this when they're going through their team. So they'll probably know that engineering is sitting here because Flight Deck 1 is getting that. So normally you would want things like engineering and security somewhere in this row, the 3rd or the 4th row, for that reason that it's not being, you know, you can't see it as noticeable in the beginning of the match. Now, Cargo Bay, there is something here about having strong... So the 2 people I have in Cargo Bay actually aren't really the best on war defense, but I do know a lot of people that stick Cargo Bay in between some of the rooms. So like putting it, for example, Cargo Bay here where Reactor would be or something like that, where they would have to punch through, you know, a tough Cargo Bay. Some people do that, and that's the reason is because of the buff that it gives. 8 positive effects randomly to defending allies. Sometimes this can be pretty crazy. You can spawn with buffs like immunity and stealth and all sorts of weird stuff, and you know, it can really mess up some attacking teams not expecting these kind of things. But for me, I don't actually use it that much. Maybe that's just a misstep from me, and the hangar is actually not a super important room either, and you're probably wondering why it's in the corner. Now, normally when people go through, when they attack an Alliance War, normally they just either go down straight the center, or, you know, they always go to the bottom, because they always figure, most people figure that, you know, the best rooms are at the bottom, and normally that is the case. So the reason why Hangar is here is because I think before I had Medbay over here, and I didn't want too many rooms lumped together. So if they were to blow up the Hangar, if they got all the way to the bottom, they would have to decide, you know, if they went down the right, for example, you know, if they wanted to blow up the Hangar and see what's next to Hangar, or continue on with the Armory, which is a bit beefier for me. And the reason why my bridge is also in Reactor are kind of not at the bottom is because they're quite well defended, and so even if they have to clear it out, normally the Reactor and the bridge are cleared out, you know, later. Most people would opt to clear them towards the end of the match because that's not as important. So when you're on the offense, you really want to go for Armory first, and then Barracks second, and Medbay third. Not necessarily in that order, but these are the 3 priority for buffs. So Medbay gives 40% max health to all defending allies. Now this isn't as good as Barracks, because Barracks does give plus 20% to all stats. Medbay is health only, and while that sounds really good, it's not as good as Barracks, which has damage, armor, resistance, and focus, and all of the rest of the stats. So this is a bigger priority for your killing if you find this in your Alliance War. So keep that in mind as well. Armory first, Barracks second, Medbay third, and then after that, Reactor and Bridge, they can be taken down later on, normally towards the end of the match for additional points. So they are worth quite a lot of points, so I wouldn't ignore them. But in terms of priority early on, that's not something you need to do. Now, Hangar is kind of like this weird one at the end. You know, if you, or not at the end, but you know, if it's weak and you think you can clear it out, then clear it. But otherwise, I wouldn't stress too much about it. You know, it only gives deflect as a buff for attacking allies, which is helpful. Don't get me wrong, but it's not all that necessary to win matches. So yes, in terms of room alignment, I think what's most important is making sure that security hits the maximum amount of rooms in terms of the priority room. So that's why I have Armory, Reactor, Bridge, and Medbay. And in particular, I think I did mention it a little bit before, but security and Reactor together makes a really crippling combination. Honestly, Reactor is one of the most painful rooms I've ever had to deal with in Alliance War, just because of the disrupt function. And if you have all of these adjacent buffs and debuffs as well, it makes it a really hard push to get through. And so I just wanted to point that out as well. You know, in the end, there's going to come down to some personal preference in terms of room layout. It's going to depend on, you know, your alliance and how powerful your TCP is, and in terms of what characters, who in your alliance has good war defense characters and where you want to put them. So all of that is stuff I can't necessarily tell you guys, but in terms of priorities, where I would put your sort of stronger war defense players is in those rooms I mentioned previously. I also wanted to mention one particular strategy that I have actually employed in the past, and that's actually making an easy target flight deck. That way you can bait people over into one side. So for example, I could actually move like Cargo Bay here, and hopefully I remember where I put them before, and then like Hangar and Medbay here, something like that. And then where you can sort of focus them down the left-hand side. What you'd want to do is make sure that in your flight deck 1 that you had some of your weaker members here, at least on one side, so it looks like it's easy to get through. And that way you can have them sort of, if they're smart enough to, or maybe it's not smart enough, if they're not smart enough, they'll take the bait and then they'll go down one side, which has a sort of a handful of less useful rooms, and you can get them down that way. And now the downside to that, of course, is that once they figure out what's going on, that a lot of your good rooms are going to be clumped on the other side as well. So keep that in mind there. But that has been something I have done in the past, not so much lately, because I'm kind of getting into higher tier ranks, but I think it is something that can work at the lower levels. So. And now I'm just going to go into my bridge here, and I'll show you guys some of the war defense teams that I'm using currently, and some maybe others that some people in my alliance are as well. So currently I'm using Wave 1 Avengers in my first slot. This used to be actually Defenders, and then I moved them from war defense onto offense so that I can use them to fight villain characters. Now second is Red Skull. These are very common war defense teams as well. Mercs, also another common war defense team. BKT is my number 4 with Vision, and that's what this was an old Ultima 6 team of mine back in the day. Marauders, or Maltron with Ultron. I replaced Sabretooth and put in Ultron, and that's done actually pretty well for me here. So that's my 5th team. 6th team is Shield Coulson. And then 7 Asgardians and 8 Black Order. Now, if you are far enough that you are actually using a Black Order team, I wouldn't recommend putting them on war defense unless they're considerably higher in terms of team power, because obviously when one character falls, then you know, Thanos stops being empowered. So if you are, I would say under 300k, 350 maybe, even depending on, you know, what your alliance is at and things like that, I would consider keeping them for the offense instead than defense. If you do have a really high Black Order, then I think you should be putting them on the defense, because I normally pull out anywhere from 5 to 10 defense wins before I actually lose them. So it has worked really well for me in the past. So In terms of, honestly, war defense, at least when you're as far as I am, they kind of become quite static. Not always, but I mean, you do get a lot of the same team. So you get the Shield Coulson here. Some people do put X-Men, although I would recommend keeping X-Men on the offense. They are a better offense team, but some people do opt for that here. So Black Order again. We have Symbiotes here. So I keep my Symbiotes for offense to use against Asgardians, but some people, do put them on defense. And I think they sort of work, but they're very susceptible to Brotherhood. They can be blinded quite easily. And then we have Asgardians again. We have Inhumans. Again, I would normally keep Inhumans for offense. And then we have the Defenders and Aimtron. So this is something I used in the past as well, Aimtron. But now I have Aim on my offense, which I use against certain teams. And so, yeah, unfortunately, that's the way sort of war defense is. It's very static in terms of, because now that we're getting sort of war defense characters, and we're getting even more in the coming patches, we're getting She-Hulk, which is going to turn potentially Fantastic Four into a war defense team, and it's sort of become a cookie cutter game mode in the sense that we have characters that are designed for war defense, like Mercs, Asgardians, Shield, and whatnot, and the Marauders, and eventually I think it's going to be filled up with these war defense teams. And then we're going to have war offense teams, which is a little bit unfortunate, but that's kind of how they're pushing the game mode, it seems. So I just wanted to show that off a little bit here. Again, most people in my alliance are using sort of the same teams, Asgardians, Black Order, whatever the heck that is, Marauders, Shield Coulson, and Mercs, and that. So, and then we might actually be getting Sinister Six with Doc Ock as well as a potential war defense team. So most of the 8 teams that are available on war defense, I think, is probably going to be filled up with the majority of the war defense teams that are available now. There is this upgrade button here. I know that's been saying coming soon for a very long time. I hope maybe they make some adjustments to Alliance War, because I think it's personally, I think it's getting a little bit stale. I think that it's kind of just going through the motions, and it really has to do with how active your alliance is. So for the upper alliances, it really comes down to that first couple of hours where you're trying to seek and destroy the priority rooms, like I mentioned. So armory, barracks, med bay, things like that. And if you can get them down the earlier as possible, the more impact that's going to make in terms of the overall war. Now, unfortunately, with my alliance, we're a bit more on the casual end, so normally we don't end up seeking and destroying that quickly. So for alliances like mine, I would normally recommend focusing the barracks actually #1 if you can't find it early. If you can find armory early, great, destroy that as soon as possible. But if you're in like beyond 12 hours of the game, of the match, I would probably consider things like barracks first rather than armory, because at that point you've a lot of the time has already gone by. So armory is definitely great if you can get it, ASAP. Other than that, though, you'd want to focus on barracks and medbay after that, in my opinion. And I think that's really all I have to say about Alliance War at the moment. Like I said, if there is something that I missed or if I was unclear about, then please feel free to leave that in the comments below. I know it's a little bit all over the place. I didn't go in the order that I said I was going to talk about things, but if there's something you missed or if there's something you want me to clarify, then please leave that in the comments below and I'll get back to you on that. So let's outro now for the video. So yeah, what else can I say about Alliance War? I mean, it's going to remain a pretty important part of the game, given what's at stake in terms of rewards. And especially the war credits that's used for important farms such as Sif, X-23, Mr. Sinister, and even Carnage with Symbiote Dominance. Not to mention other important orange gear that you can buy out of it as well. There are some things that you can do, like I mentioned in the video, that can help you be prepared for war and understand things a bit better in terms of layout and attack priority if you're the one directing or helping out in war, such as the importance of the armory, barracks, and medbay, and leaving rooms like reactor and bridge closer to the end. At the end of the day, though, the experience might be a bit more unique to each alliance and your playstyle, and whether or not you're more hardcore about it or more casual like myself. I also want to point out that the matchmaking algorithm also pushes you towards a 50% win ratio, so there's likely a chance that you'll be placed up against higher alliances than yourself if you win once or twice. I didn't really touch on the matchmaking part, as that's probably a different discussion altogether, but it does seem, at least to me, that the whole Shell Alliance thing is kind of less relevant now than it was before. I'm not really seeing it much anymore these days. Anyways, I hope that some of my tips helped you guys if you were a bit unsure about war, and especially the management side of things as well. And as always, if there's anything that was unclear, then feel free to get at me and I can help you out. If you enjoyed my video today, then please smash that like button down below and consider subscribing to my channel if you haven't already. And until next time, stay safe, and I'll see y'all later. Boylon signing out.